Once upon a time, when Phillip Schofield wasn't just a TV presenter, he was part of the furniture, not someone you tuned in for, someone who was just there. You wake up, put the kettle on, turn the telly on for the background noise, and there he was. Same face, same voice, same calm tone every single day. You didn't choose to watch him, you absorbed him morning after morning, year after year, decade after decade. And that kind of presence does something, because real power in television doesn't come from being loud or controversial or constantly reinventing yourself. It comes from familiarity, from becoming so normal, so expected that nobody thinks to question you anymore. When someone reaches that level, they're not just talent, they're trusted. They're relied on, protected, built into the system. And once that happens, things don't get challenged, get overlooked. So when Phillip Schofield vanished from British television, no farewell montage, no final sofa moment, no slow goodbye. It wasn't just the fall of a presenter, it was the collapse of an image that had been quietly reinforced for years and years. Which raises the real question. How does a man go from being Britain's safest pair of hands to someone broadcasters no longer want to mention? Maybe more importantly, how long does something have to be happening before everybody pretends it isn't? Let's talk about it. Act 2, the safe pair of hands. By the time Phillip Schofield settled into This Morning, he wasn't climbing anymore. He'd arrived. Daytime television lives and dies on trust. It's not about big moments, it's about repetition. Same time, same faces, same tone. And Phillip mastered that. He knew when to speak, he knew when to smile, he knew when to step back and let somebody else shine. Nothing risky, nothing unpredictable. And that made executives comfortable. Because whenever a TV show runs 5 days a week, year after year, the last thing a broadcaster wants is any uncertainty. So Phillip became the constant. Not just a presenter, a stabiliser. Someone who made producers relax. Someone advertisers felt safe attaching themselves to. Someone viewers felt they already knew. And that trust opened doors. It wasn't just This Morning anymore. ITV kept handing him bigger and bigger responsibilities. Live events, special broadcasts, and eventually primetime formats. The Cube is a perfect example. High pressure television, big money, one wrong move and this whole thing collapses. And that's not a slot you gamble with. That's a format built entirely on control. Calm delivery, authority, reassurance, and Phillip fitted it effortlessly. By this point, he wasn't just fronting shows, he was representing the brand. When you reach that level, you're no longer treated like an ordinary talent. Questions stop being asked, boundaries blur, and familiarity becomes protection. Because when someone's been trusted for long enough, challenging them starts to feel unnecessary, even uncomfortable. And that's how people don't just become famous, they become embedded. Act 3, the moment everything changed. February 2020. A short message appears online, posted directly to Phillip Schofield's social media. No press conference, no build-up, just a statement. Phillip comes out publicly as gay. For many watching at home, feels sudden. After decades of marriage, after years of presenting family television, after building a very specific, carefully managed public image, the reaction is immediate. Support pours in, messages of praise, framing it as brave, historic, overdue. ITV moves fast. The story is brought onto This Morning itself. Controlled, sympathetic, carefully produced. Phillip talks about confusion, about living one version of himself privately and another in public. He speaks about honesty, about reaching a point where he could no longer keep those worlds separate. And sitting beside him is Holly Willoughby. Not just as a co-host, but as a visible show of support, a friend, a stabilising presence.
You may have just seen on social just now that Phillip has put out a statement about something very, very personal to him. I have never been more proud of my friend than I am today. We're going to do this together. In a moment, he wants to talk here to you to explain a little more. If you haven't seen the statement, this is what it said.
For most viewers, it lands as reassurance. This is safe, this is supported, this is being handled. But outside the studio bubble, the reaction is a lot more mixed. Alongside sympathy, there's also satire, commentary, that familiar British reflex, humour as scrutiny. Writers and commentators begin picking apart the optics. One moment in particular circulates. Holly reading Phillip's words out loud. Phillip sitting quietly beside her, eyes fixed ahead.
Every day on This Morning, I sit in awe of those that we meet and who have been brave and open in confronting their truth. So now it's my turn to share mine. This will probably all come as something of a surprise, and I understand. But only by facing this, by being honest, can I hope to find peace in my mind and a way forward.
Charlie Brooker jokes that Phillip resembles a ventriloquist doll.
Yes, in a bizarre ventriloquist act, Holly Willoughby temporarily identified as Phillip Schofield to announce they were now identifying as a gay man, which is as 2020 as it gets.
With Holly effective speaking for him. I mean, it's tongue-in-cheek. It's not malicious, but it matters. Because satire is often the first sign that an image of a person has shifted. Phillip is no longer untouchable. He's no longer just the presenter. He's become a subject. And once that happens, people start revisiting old conversations. Things that were once dismissed, stories that never quite added up, details that felt too awkward to raise at the time. The spotlight doesn't just brighten, it widens. And while the public moment is framed as closure, behind the scenes, the tone has completely changed. Act 4, what people said they already knew. After that public moment, something changes. Not on screen, but behind it. Because once Phillip's personal life becomes open conversation, people inside the industry start speaking more freely. Not to newspapers, not publicly, but to each other. Former crew members, production staff, people who worked on This Morning at different points over the years. And the same story keeps resurfacing, that Phillip had a really close relationship with a much younger male colleague. Someone he'd helped get into television. Someone he'd known long before they ever worked together. According to multiple accounts that later circulated, Phillip had first met the individual when they were still a teenager, around 13 years old, through theatre and performance environments. Years later, when that same person was old enough to work, good old Phillip was said to have helped them secure a role within ITV. From there, the closeness became noticeable. Staff have since claimed it wasn't unusual to see the two together, outside work, including meals and social occasions, long before any relationship was ever acknowledged publicly. But what really raised the eyebrows internally were the routines. Several former staff members later described how on certain mornings, 2 ITV cars would arrive at the same private address. One vehicle to collect Phillip, another to collect the younger colleague. Both cars then driving separately to the This Morning studios. Those accounts suggest that this wasn't hidden from everyone, but it also wasn't challenged, or not formally, not openly, because by that stage, Phillip wasn't just another presenter. He was senior, trusted, embedded. And in environments like that, people tend to assume someone else has already signed it off. If management know, why would a runner question it? If executives are silent, why would any of the junior staff speak up? So the situation, according to those accounts, became something people talked about quietly. And that's the uncomfortable space where institutions often fail. Not through one dramatic decision, but through collective hesitation. No single moment where someone says, this is fine. Just a long stretch where nobody says, this isn't. At the time, nothing appeared in the press, no investigation was made public, no statement issued. But once the spotlight widened after 2020, those old conversations didn't disappear. They waited. And when the rest of the story began to unravel, those whispers suddenly felt louder than ever. Act 5, the family shadow. Then comes the moment that changes the temperature completely. In May 2023, Phillip Schofield's younger brother is convicted of a serious sexual offence involving a minor. The sentence is lengthy, the details are disturbing.
Today, a former member of police staff is today in jail for 12 years after being convicted of sexual offences against a child. Timothy Schofield, who worked for Avon and Somerset Police at our headquarters at Portishead, committed a series of sickening offences for which he's now been brought to justice.
And suddenly, the story isn't just about rumours or workplace relationships anymore. It's about judgment. During the trial, the court hears that Phillip had been told about his brother's actions way back in 2021. According to the evidence, Phillip didn't report this to the police. Instead, he advised his brother to seek professional help. Now, legally, Phillip hadn't committed a crime, but morally, in the court of public opinion, questions immediately follow. Because this isn't a distant relative, this is his close family. When someone spends decades positioned as a trusted public figure, particularly one associated with family-friendly television, those decisions carry huge weight. Phillip steps away from This Morning temporarily around the time of the trial, officially described as pre-planned leave. But when he returns to the screen shortly afterwards, the atmosphere feels different. Viewers notice it, and so do colleagues. At the same time, reports begin to surface suggesting tensions behind the scenes, that Phillip and Holly Willoughby are no longer as close as their on-screen dynamic suggests. Nothing dramatic, no public fallout, just distance. And distance in television is often louder than words, because once trust is questioned in one area, it tends to spread. Old stories are re-examined, past decisions are reinterpreted, patterns are reassessed with fresh eyes. And for Phillip, this conviction doesn't exist in isolation. It collides with everything else that's been quietly circulating for years. The rumours, the unanswered questions, the sense that things have been tolerated rather than addressed. From this point on, the situation begins to move quickly. Not because of one headline, but because the context has changed. The benefit of the doubt starts to disappear, and once that goes, so does the protection. Act 6, When the Dam Broke. By late May 2023, the pressure isn't building, it's leaking. Stories are circulating faster now, not just online, but internally. Meetings are happening behind closed doors. Statements are being drafted, rewritten, softened, and then on the 20th of May, it happens. Phillip Schofield steps down from This Morning.
We have some breaking news to bring you, and that is about Phillip Schofield, the former presenter of ITV's This Morning programme, because this evening he has quit the broadcaster, and that follows further allegations about his private life.
The announcement is brief, carefully worded, no emotion, no explanation beyond the surface. After more than 2 decades on a sofa, there's no farewell episode, no tribute montage, no final wave to the camera, just absence. For viewers, it's jarring. This isn't how long-serving presenters usually leave. This isn't a planned exit. It feels abrupt, controlled, defensive. Behind the scenes, relationships appear to be fraying. Reports begin to suggest that Phillip and Holly Willoughby, once presented as an inseparable on screen, haven't been on good terms for some time. Nothing explosive, no shouting matches, just silence, distance, 2 people sharing a set, but not much else. Following day, Holly releases a statement.
Feels very strange indeed sitting here without Phil. And I imagine that you might have been feeling a lot like I have. Shaken, troubled, let down, worried for the well-being of people on all sides of what's been going on, and full of questions. You, me, and all of us at This Morning gave our love and support to someone who was not telling the truth, who acted in a way that they themselves felt that they had to resign from ITV and step down from a career that they loved. That is a lot to process. And it's equally hard to see the toll that it's taken on their own mental health. I think what unites us all now is a desire to heal for the health and well-being of everyone. I hope that as we start this new chapter and get back to a place of warmth and magic that this show holds for all of us, we can find strength in each other.
It's polite, professional, thankful, but noticeably restrained. She acknowledges their years of working together, but there's no warmth, there's no personal sentiment. And people notice that too. Because when someone who's built their career on chemistry suddenly loses it, it tells you something has shifted. At this point, Phillip is still technically an ITV presenter. He's even scheduled to host the British Soap Awards weeks later. But the ground beneath him is unstable. The protection that once surrounded him, the benefit of the doubt, the instinct to smooth things over, that's all gone. From here on, events stop being managed quietly. They start happening in public. And once that line is crossed, there's no going back. Act 7, the admission. A few days later, the story breaks properly. Phillip releases a statement to the press. This time, there's no ambiguity. He admits he lied, not just to the public, but to ITV, to colleagues, to friends, to his own representatives.
I did have a consensual on-off relationship with a younger male colleague at This Morning. That relationship was unwise, but not illegal. It is now over. I am painfully conscious that I have lied to my employers at ITV, to my colleagues and friends, to my agents, to the media, and therefore the public, and most importantly of all, to my family. I am so very, very sorry, and I am resigning from ITV with immediate effect, expressing my immense gratitude to them for all the amazing opportunities that they have given me.
There is no question I did a bad thing. Unprofessional. First time. I know I did that.
He confirms that he did have a relationship with a much younger male colleague. He describes it as consensual. He describes it as unwise. He insists it was not illegal, and he apologises. On paper, it's everything you'd expect from a crisis statement. You know, clear admissions, direct language, ownership of mistakes. But again, in moments like this, it's not just what is said, it's how it lands. An interview follows. Phillip appears seated casually, relaxed posture, soft delivery. At one point, he's holding a Lost Mary vape.
Would there be accusations that you groomed him?
I did not. I mean, there are accusations of all sorts of things.
And almost instantly, the internet locks onto it. Memes appear within hours, clips are looped, screenshots freeze frame the moment. People joke that Phil's trying to look younger, trying to seem relatable, trying to play down the seriousness by softening the image. Whether that was fair or not, or whether it was just people projecting, beside the point. Because once something becomes meme material, you've lost control of the narrative. The apology stops being about accountability, it starts being about optics. And that's deadly in situations like this. What might have been read as remorse by some is read as tone deaf by others. And in the background, more consequences follow. Phillip announces he's stepping down from the British Soap Awards. His final scheduled ITV appearance disappears. Then comes the next blow. His talent agency drops him. They released their own statement, carefully worded but firm, saying new information had come to light that contradicted what they'd previously been told. At that point, the message is clear. This isn't just a pause, this isn't damage control, this is separation. Phillip resigns from ITV entirely. With that, the career he built over more than 3 decades come to an abrupt stop. No closing chapter, no final appearance, just a statement followed by silence. Act 8, when the industry spoke. Once Phillip steps away, the silence doesn't last long. Because when a figure that senior falls, people who've been holding their tongues suddenly find their voice. Former colleagues start commenting. Not in dramatic tell-alls, but pointed remarks. Questions about culture, about hierarchy, about who knew what and when. One of the loudest voices was Eamon Holmes, a familiar face, someone who worked inside the same building for years. He doesn't just criticise Phillip, he criticises the system around him.
All is not what it seems, because he has obviously done a deal with the newspaper to give a version of what the newspaper knew, and it was all a bit weird. Yeah. At that stage, though, I believed he was gay, and that's what he was coming out, and that was the information we were given. We were lied to, and Ruth and I, to this day, are embarrassed and ashamed when we see those pictures, when we see the toils that some people who are tortured by their sexuality have to go through. And this man, was this a cover-up for something else? They like a certain order, even if that order is corrupt. Doesn't matter if they're bending the rules or breaking the rules, but as long as they instigate lockdown, then it's their way or the highway. But I mean, none of them are even honest.
He suggests senior ITV figures were aware of behaviour that raised concern and that nothing was done. Not because nobody noticed, but because nobody wanted to rock the boat.
Where were you going to go to with these rumours? Who? You know, everyone was Team Phillip and Holly, and they were there together, they were seen together, they were the brand. You then go back, why were there no changes? Why was there no retribution? Because of the management around them, the people who tolerated these things that went on.
And those comments matter because once criticism moves from gossip to named broadcasters speaking publicly, it changed the stakes. ITV responds. They confirm that concerns had been looked into previously, that investigations had taken place, that assurances were given. According to the broadcaster, both Phillip and a younger colleague denied any inappropriate relationship at the time. On paper, that closes the loop. But publicly, it opens another. Because people start asking, what does an investigation really mean? Does it rely entirely on the word of the people involved? And what responsibility does a broadcaster have when power dynamics are uneven? Phillip releases another statement. This time, Tony's defensive. He suggests the criticism is coming from a small group of people with long-held grudges, that he's being targeted now, that he's no longer protected by the show. Again, it's not necessarily what he says, it's how it lands. By this stage, the mood has shifted. Sympathy has been replaced by scepticism. Understanding by fatigue. The focus moves away from Phillip's personal choices and onto the environment that allowed everything to sit unresolved for so long. Because this isn't the first time ITV has faced questions like this. Viewers remember that, which leaves the story in an uncomfortable place. Not resolved, not clean. Just a public reckoning with no single person willing or able to carry the full weight of it. By this point, the story stops being about Phillip Schofield alone, because once the dust settles, the same questions keep coming back. Not just what did he do, but how was it allowed to sit there for so long? Phillip didn't work in isolation, he worked inside a machine built on ratings, routine and risk management. A machine that rewards stability and punishes disruption. When someone becomes valuable enough, they stop being questioned, they start being managed. Concerns don't get escalated, they get softened. Issues don't get confronted, they get parked. And over time, silence becomes policy. That's not unique to Phillip Schofield, and it's not even unique to ITV. You've seen it all before. Big personalities, long-serving stars, introduced to only act when the noise outside gets too loud to ignore.
You used to be a wrestler, didn't you? Is that right?
I still am.
Oh, yeah.
I'm feared in every girls' school in this country.
At that point, it's no longer about prevention, it's about containment. And when containment fails, the response is swift. Contracts end, statements are issued, distance is created. The system protects itself first, which leaves the public trying to work it all out. Where the responsibility really sits, with the individual, management, with the culture that mistakes familiarity for safety. Because when something becomes normal for long enough, people stop seeing it clearly. By the time clarity arrives, it's usually too late to undo the damage. Phillip Schofield's career didn't end because one headline appeared. It ended because years of unanswered questions finally collided all at the same time. When that happens, there's rarely a clean ending. Just silence, and a lot of people quietly moving on. Act 10, after the noise. After everything breaks, what's left is absence. Phillip Schofield doesn't appear on screen. There's no comeback interview, no rehabilitation tour. Instead, it's Castaway, a stripped-back survival series. One man on an island, no audience. No audience sofa, no studio sofa, no laughter track to hide behind. He fishes, builds shelter, talks to camera alone. Frames it as reflection, survival, as being cut off from the world. It isn't a return, it's a pause.
When my agent called,
my phone rang and I picked it up. Mate, are you somewhere quiet? Which is never a good sign. Yeah. Okay, all right. I've got a bit of a shock. Right. I'm afraid you've been let go from this morning. What? Yeah, that's it. It's done. You're not going back on Monday. What? Because of what? I think it's the publicity, mate. That's got nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with me. Why would I be sacked for something that somebody else did? I've just been fired because of him.
Because I was becoming more of a story than the programme. It was better for the show, better for the channel.
And I agreed to say that I'd resigned because it would be neater for everybody.
Television, meanwhile, moves on. New presenters take the slots, new faces fill the sofa. Formats continue like nothing ever happened. And that, in a strange way, is the final chapter. Because British television doesn't really do endings, it does replacement. Careers don't always collapse in dramatic fashion. Sometimes they just stop. No official ban, no public trial, just a quiet understanding. Doors now closed. For Phillip, the image that took decades to build was dismantled in weeks. Not because one thing happened, but because too many things arrived all at once. Rumours that never went away, decisions questioned too late, a system that chose silence until it couldn't. And in the end, there's no single lesson neatly wrapped up here. Just a reminder that familiarity can become protection. That power often looks ordinary, and that when stories like this surface, they rarely belong to one person alone. What remains isn't outrage, it's reflection. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you made it this far, make sure you comment below Schofield and then whatever you think about him. We have got so many of these reaction videos lined up. They've been great fun to do. I hope you're enjoying them. And make sure you share it, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you on the other side.